Yeah, but now I don't think it's that easy. Oh, it doesn't really need to be a strong if your chief director.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining on time. My name is Julius Lante, and I work with Impact Investing Ghana as the Senior Research and Policy Officer, and I'm also the Secretariat Lead for the Ghana Research and Industry Collaborative. Given that we have quite a number over here, 10 people in all, we would want to move straight through the program so we work within time. And so I would want to share the outline. So we'll have the introduction of the participants on this platform. Then we'll have the welcome remarks by Professor Davis Mensah, who is the chair of the collaboration subcommittee of GRIC, and also the director for the Center for Entrepreneurship and Small Enterprise Development of the University of Cape Coast. Then we'll have the main presentation by Dr. Kizzie-Hayford. Then we'll have the Q&A, then the feedback, then we'll look at the summary that will be done by Prof. Mensah, and then the next steps and closing. So in no particular order, we would want to ask you to introduce yourself, your name, your organization, current project or program that you are executing, and then any potential collaborative opportunity that you want to get from this presentation or any other that would come. And so I would want to call on this Madam Felicia Chumesi, if you can please briefly introduce yourself based on the format shared. Thank you. Please, okay, so whoever is ready to speak can introduce themselves.
All right, so good morning. I am Davis Mensah, as Mr. Lamte indicated. I am speaking from the University of Cape Coast, the Center for Entrepreneurship and Small Enterprise Development, CESED for short. I work here as the director of the center, and I would want to speak on behalf of the center in terms of the potential collaborative opportunity that we are exploring. Currently, we would want to collaborate with industry to look at ways and means of upgrading the skills of, workers. And so if at any point in time, any of the persons who have joined us today has plans of engaging an external body to support the training and development of staff, especially skills upgrade, we are ready to support you. Thank you.
Thank you. So I see Nazir Kizzie-Hayford. Kindly introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you, Julius. And good morning to all of you. Yes, my name is Nazir Kizzie-Hayford. I work with the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation as the Deputy Director for Science, Technology and Innovation. Thank you.
Thank you. So I see John Defo on the call.
Yes, good morning to all of you. My name is John Defo. I work with the Association of Ghana Industries. I'm the Director for Policy and Research, and I share a lot in common with my good friend Julius. So I'm seeking to see how best we could leverage on some of the works of our research institutions to feed into industry. We've got into a time where we seek to achieve a lot more with little. And I know academia has most of the works and the results, except that we keep on hearing that they are not very much publicized. So I want to see where we could leverage on some of their works to support what we do in industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. So please, I see Jerry Ampofo on the call. So Jerry, please introduce yourself.
They've already done it. Hello?
Hello, Jerry.
Yes, my name is Jerry Ampofo. I'm a researcher in the Department of Biochemistry, University of Cape Coast. Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you. So I see Catherine. Catherine, kindly introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Catherine Kizzie-Hayford with the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation, and I work as an Assistant Director 1 with the Research, Statistics and Information Management Directorate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I see Irene Nate, and please introduce yourself.
Good morning. Okay, I'm Ayonato Josephat. I'm representing Ghana Enterprise University and I work at the Policy Planning, Research, Monitoring and Evaluation Department.
Wilfred Dennis, please could you introduce yourself?
Hello, good morning. My name is Wilfred Adam Dennis. I'm with the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation. I'm a Principal Research Officer. I'm with the Research, Statistics and Information Management Directorate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then I see Felicia, please, I made mention your name, but you are unable to speak. If you're able to do so, kindly introduce yourself. All right, so Justice Kwabena Safo, please, if you're ready, kindly introduce yourself.
Yeah, please. I'm from Department of Biochemistry, University of Cape Coast.
Okay, sure. Thank you very much. And then finally, we move on to the team from IGH. So Justina, kindly introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Justina. I work with Julius at Impact Investing Ghana as the program lead for deal room and investor engagements. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Then I see Diane. So Diane, please introduce yourself. Okay, Diane seems okay. Then I see Amalate. I'm on the call, so please introduce yourself, Ama.
Hello, my name is Amalate, and I'm with Impact Investing Ghana. It's great to be here.
Thank you very much. And so I'm sure the rest, as we continue, they can introduce themselves in the chat. So we want to move straight to the welcome remarks, and this will be delivered by Professor Lady Sumensa. So, Prof, please, your audience or participants.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lamte. So once again, a warm welcome to all of us. We are very pleased to have you online. Join our maiden industry brief, session. This session is one of the, primary activities of the Collaborative Research Committee of the Ghana Research Industry Collaborative. And today we are privileged to have Dr. Nazir Kizzie-Hayford from the University of Cape Coast take us through a very important, topic. And before I invite Dr. Kizzie-Hayford to do his presentation, I would want to indicate the relevance of what we are doing to both, sides, that is industry and academia. And apparently, I have been very much interested in collaboration between industry and academia. And let me say, maybe among three key actors. So I bring on board government, because whatever we do as industry and players in academia, if government does not support what we do, then for some of the innovations, it may become quite difficult for us to really transfer to industry for uptake. And so I would want to use this platform to urge the various government representatives who have joined us today to also give us the necessary support. Their presence here really shows that they have this particular collaborative at heart, and they would support us in whatever ways to ensure that we achieve our aim. Currently, we talk of the knowledge-based economy. And in the knowledge-based economy, we need to thrive on knowledge. And when it comes to entrepreneurship, knowledge is a very important source of entrepreneurial opportunities, which then industry can take up to drive national innovation. And we today are going to look at a very important aspect of entrepreneurial opportunities emerging from research institutions, including universities. Throughout my research, starting from 2012, it has become very clear that we, that is academics, we do a lot of research. And I was amazed in 2012 up to 2014, when I ended my major research in this area, to learn that, in fact, a number of the universities have scholars like Dr. Kizzie-Hayford, who have the development of the nation at heart, and their research actually focus on industry needs. But then In the absence of the necessary coordinating mechanism, such as GRIC, all right, we have our beautiful research findings remaining on the shelves, remaining in the labs, wherever we end up placing them or throwing them, we just leave them there. And so I would want to commend the Ghana Impact Investing Ghana for taking up this bold step to create the Ghana Research and Industry Collaborative. Right, a very important aimed at fostering the necessary collaboration between industry, academia, and I would want to add even among industry, academia, government, and then all other relevant parties, development partners, because we also need that unity of purpose. If we want to make inroads in terms of tapping into our rich entrepreneurial opportunities embedded in research findings, then all, hands should be, brought on deck. And this is a very laudable initiative. And it is my prayer that after the maiden session, we would continue to have subsequent sessions that would yield the necessary results in terms of uptake of research findings. In fact, GRIC has a platform, an online platform, so let me say a website, where we invite industry players to actually share their research needs, and then for academics or researchers to also upload their research findings that they deem important for uptake by industry. And so I would urge all of us to carry across the message and make good use of that platform to drive our development as a nation. So on that note, I would want to say once again a warm welcome, and please let us enjoy Dr. Nazir Kizzie-Hayford's presentation. Thank you.
Sure, thank you very much, Prof. Chair. And so I didn't introduce him, so he will get the opportunity. But Dr. Nazir is the senior lecturer from the School of Biological Sciences, University of Cape Coast. And so at this critical moment, I would want to ask him to take over the presentation. And so, Doc, please, take over, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lamte, for this great opportunity. I would want to first of all try and share my screen so that we will be able to advance our presentation for today. So, hello. Hello.
We can hear you, Doc. Yeah.
You can hear me. Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Lamte, and also thanks a lot, Prof. Mavis Mensah, for this great opportunity. Thanks particularly to the GRIC team also for this privilege given me to share this research on enhancing tiger nut milk for better stability and consumer appeal. As has been rightly indicated, our expectation from this presentation is that at the end of the day, we'll be able to share some thoughts on how some underutilized agri-produce or underutilized food crops could perhaps find its way into our main food chain. And we're using an example like tiger nut milk, the case of tiger nuts, where we can form, for instance, several products, and we're using just tiger nut milk as one of the examples. And it's my singular privilege that I can share this, because then at the end of the day, we can see how we can share knowledge and also, as it were, see various ways by which industry, research, food technologies, manufacturing groups, and as well as the government roles we can play to let this happen as a way of creating alternatives for food, in solving cases of hunger and malnutrition, and also avenues for creating new jobs and also boosting research. So this collaboration could be very important, and I'm really thankful to GRIC for this opportunity they gave me to make this presentation. So I'll be talking generally about tiger nuts, as this topic seeks to emphasize. And to start with, I would just say that normally we call it tiger nuts in our part, but elsewhere in Spain, where tiger nuts also occurs abundantly, is referred to as chufa. Elsewhere, we have earth almond, rush nut, yellow nutseed, and usually this is described as a tuberous rhizome. So it's not really a nut, but a rhizome, a tuberous rhizome that is obtained from the grass-like seed of the family Cyperaceae. So here we see the tiger nuts, and then these tiger nuts are derived from these grass-like plants. These are perennial in nature. They are tough and erect, and they are usually about 30 to 90 centimeters in length, usually the plant length, and you have these long roots that develop at the end of the roots, these tiger nuts, and these type of plants that grow at several tropical and Mediterranean regions. So for instance, we see several places in Africa where tiger nuts grow, several places in Europe, Asia, North America, among other places. These tiger nuts grow in several places, particularly in the tropical and Mediterranean regions. These tiger nuts are cultivated in few regions in Ghana. So for instance, the Esukese, Donkokrom, in Koko in the eastern, Boko in the upper west, Wa in the upper west, Boko in the upper east, Krachi in Volta, Techman in Buna Ahafo. So, and particularly in the central regions, we find it in Kwenyakum, Bojase, Kaswa, Elmina, Prasu, Gomoa, among other places. This is by Donko et al. But elsewhere, Chumesi et al. Also reports some other places in different regions, as we can see in this map. Tapo in the upper west, and its environs. We have Upper East, Zebila in its environs. And then particularly in the central region, we have several places in the western and the eastern regions. These are distributed all over. Actually, it has been reported that the majority of youth and women, Tete Ofori reports about 85% of youth and women who live in such places using tiger nuts as their means of livelihood. That means that they engage in tiger nut farming, and this provides jobs for this majority of youth and women. Apparently, it's not so clear the production capacities in Ghana, because these are small holder farms. They farm on subsistence basis, but then because there are several in number, many times they tend to, when these numbers come together, then you know that it's quite a substantial quantities that are produced, but because they are informal groups, it's not so sure what the production capacities are, what the production constraints are. Limited associations among these make it difficult to know exactly into what uses tiger nuts are put into in types of food uses. But then it's reported that Ghana exports tiger nuts. According to Trade, it mentions that somewhere in 2017, you had about 63,000 metric tons that was exported, amounting to about 535 USD. You have about 2019, about 62,000 metric tons that was exported, accounting for approximately 434,000 USD. I think somewhere in 2021, then it fell drastically to around 39,500 metric tons, valued at 93,960. And we see these numbers, it's not so clear what causes the downward trend, but probably some issues of COVID and maybe issues with the The Ghana exchange rates could have affected this, and it would have been very nice to know most current information from 2021 until 2024, how the trend looks like. But this is the information we get from trade until now. I think as the information becomes more available, we'll be able to share a bit more of this data. Indeed, tiger nut finds some uses in Ghana and is believed to have, for instance, aphrodisiac properties, diuretic effects, and some consume it for the management of colon cancer issues, cardiovascular diseases prevention, good health effects. It shows good health effects on diabetics and prevention of constipation, among others. So its consumption has been associated with some of these. I think when there's time, we can discuss some of these that are documented in the literature. But currently, tiger nuts may be consumed raw. So this is what we see often by the roadsides. These are sold by the roadsides and hawked by the roadsides as roasted or baked and to develop different flavors. And then this may also be used elsewhere, especially in Nigeria, as sweetened gruels in the form of kunu. So here we see some examples of this kunu, which is the wet milled tiger nuts extracts that is combined with coconuts and ginger, among other spices. And these are sold as sweet, light liquids, and usually marketed, during summer, etc., as a useful source of drink. In Ghana, we also take atadri milk, which sometimes is also mixed with some flours from, let's say, rice, among others. And these are all informal products. But then in Spain, this is a really commercialized product that is described as horchata. I had the opportunity to taste horchata, and this is generally the liquid extract. This is really very light liquid extract that is sweetened and sold during summer. And many people patronize this as the main type of drink in Spain. Elsewhere, in some parts of Ghana, it may also be used for flavoring beverages. So mainly the alcoholic beverages, you have many of these tiger nuts being represented there, the flavorings from them. Tiger nut is an important source of nutrients and perhaps might be very important in tapping its resource base as an important source of nutrients. This is because basically when we look at the composition, then we're talking about 68% of these tiger nuts being made of carbohydrates. Of this, starch is about 44%, sucrose is approximately 28%, fructose about 4% that way, and glucose about 10%. And their presence of sucrose, fructose, and glucose makes the tiger nuts naturally sweet. Then it also has some fats, about 26%. Of these, you have saturated, making about 22%, monounsaturated. So when you say monounsaturated, these are also good kinds of fatty acids that are present, making about 66%, and polyunsaturated, making about 13%. And this makes it an important source of unsaturated or essential fatty acids. Then protein is very little, about 3.5%. Then it has some fiber in there, about 13%, and some minerals that are about approximately 2%, and this may include potassium, phosphate, silicon, among other types of nutrients. So we see that tiger nut has quite important nutrients that can be exploited, for instance, as a source of valuable food. So in many of our research, we have tried to look at how tiger nuts can be integrated, more integrated into our food chain, and what possibilities there are. As at now, we don't see much of these, and from the previous slides, we see that most of these are in the area of exports. But then when it comes to processing for food, there's very limited information that addresses these bits. So the question is how processing technologies can be developed. In other words, there's still the need for processing technologies for producing convenient, higher value, consumer acceptable food products. And our research have looked a lot on how tiger nuts can be used for generating valuable food. The first one, for instance, that I just give information about is how tiger nuts can be used in enriching the different types of breads to enhance it, for instance, fiber base, but we don't know which types of breads are better. So we looked at how it can be used for, let's say, tea, sugar, and butter breads. And for this, we see that usually they are all very good, particularly for butter bread, but because of the resistant cellulosic nature of the outer walls of the tiger nuts, usually it confers gritty mouthfeel when this is incorporated into bread. So some of the things we did was to look at how we can reduce the grittiness of flours made from bread, and we did this by trying to explore sprouting. So then the tiger nuts are sprouted, and we believe that through sprouting, the resistant carbohydrates can be a bit hydrolyzed, and when we mill it, it will be more amenable to milling. So we tried this for different types of bread. And then we observed, so this is the sprouted tiger nuts, and we incorporated it into bread. And then we saw that, for instance, this is the B is the original bread, and BT is the tiger nut enriched bread, but this BST is the sprouted tiger nuts. We realized that it was able to deal with the grittiness, except that generally it has a higher water absorption property. So the inner crumb it's more crumbly, breaks easily, but this is really full of fiber, in other words, rich in fiber. And we also realized that consumer acceptance was comparable to that of the unenriched bread, showing the potential, for instance, in the industry, if this process is incorporated. We looked at some aspects also coming to this topic, characteristics of tiger nuts and how the tiger nut milk and how milling affects it. I would import some of the information we reported in this into the discussions that we'll be having today. And we didn't just look at generating tiger nut milk from tiger nuts, but also the potential of making yogurts from this. And usually I call this a lactic acid fermented tiger nut milk. We looked at some of these and realized that generally when tiger nut is freshly harvested, it's really bland. You don't taste, it's not that sweet, but then as it stays for some time, and depending on the storage condition, it has certain levels of sugars that develop, certain enzymes that develop, and all of these can influence, for instance, microbial activity if these nuts are, the milk derived from these nuts are used for producing yogurt-like systems. So we looked at how storage temperature, for instance, could affect some of the properties of lactic acid fermented tiger nut milk to mimic more or less yogurt systems. But we realized that many times because the protein is very low, there's very little gelation. So then eventually it may be important to enrich it in some proteins to improve on the sensory characteristics of a typical yogurt. And from our part of the world, we know that yogurt should look thick. So then the protein gelation, etc., in the fermenter system could improve it. So we came with some few reports. Then this is just to tell some of the processing technologies or research that could be explored in the area of tiger nut utilization. What I will talk about focusing today is on enriching tiger nut milk with sodium caseinate and xanthan gum. The fact that these may be potential, maybe promising for generating tiger nuts with higher consumer appeal, tiger nut milk with higher consumer appeal. So today's discussion, my aim is to show how the properties of tiger nut aqueous extract, which we call the tiger nut milk, so it's not really a milk, we just describe it as vegetable milk extracts, how this can be improved as a source of valuable consumer acceptable beverage. And in this presentation, I'll just present some few information regarding the tiger nut milk itself, how it is extracted and what its characteristics are. and what modifications are necessary and how these modifications affect the physical and sensory properties. And then we just summarize the findings, make some recommendations, and then we can ask some questions or give some contributions on how these processes can be implemented in general. So in the next slide, I show us the chart for tiger nut milk extraction. So this is a very summarized chart that shows that normally when we have the tiger nuts, let's say in the dry state where it should also have quite some sugars, after soaking the water, it imbibes water and weakens the cell wall and makes it more amenable to wet milling. So if this is wet milled with about 50 grams in about 300 ml, then press filtered through a membrane, then we have our tiger nut milk. Yeah, but this is a very simplified version. There are several steps that could come in between to fine-tune the properties of the tiger nut milk. But if we stick to this, then generally, tiger nut milk would have different properties depending on the milling intensity. So for this one, we looked at the effect of milling duration on the properties or on the yield of tiger nuts that can go into that can form part of the milk. And we see, for instance, when we use different milling intensities, 1, 2, and 3, we see that the yield increases from 35 grams per every 100 gram of tiger nut milk to about 41. So this represents quite significant increase with milling intensity. But then we also realize that as the milling intensity increases, we also have higher insoluble solids. And these insoluble solids are problematic because it's insoluble. Once you form the milk, the insoluble parts will sediment to the bottom as usually crystalline starch. And this is not a very desirable thing. So even though milling intensity, increasing the milling intensity increases the yield, one must be cautious about how much of these insoluble solids may end up in the milk and perhaps contribute to instability in the system. So we see that the higher milling intensity, the higher the milling intensity, the higher the yield, but also the insoluble solids, which is not a very desirable thing. On the other hand, when we look at the typical composition of tiger nut milk, then we see that, for instance, generally the water is the most part, so the solids part is about 10%. And of these 10%, the highest proportion after carbohydrates of 6.87 is the fat. And fat in aqueous systems would always float to the upper section. And so the higher the fat content, the more the cream part or the cream on the upper section. And this is not a desirable thing to see that the milk separates into an oily part and then an aqueous part. So this perhaps could be good because the fat is of healthy origin, but then the fact that it could contribute to instability is not a very desirable thing. And on the other hand, we see that it has a low protein content. The protein content can serve more or less like an emulsifier to help the fatty parts to mix well with the aqueous part to form a homogeneous system. But because the protein part is very little, then it's not able to interact well with the lipids to form a homogeneous system. So for instance, by increasing the protein content, it will not only help to get a homogeneous system, but perhaps this can also increase the protein energy associated with consumption of tiger nut milk. And in this sense, it could help in enhancing nutrition as it were. When the milk is allowed to sit for a while or stored at storage, for instance, for 28 days, we also observe that it loses its lightness. In other words, it forms more brown compounds, so it darkens or becomes more brown or loses its whiteness in the course of time. And perhaps this may be partly associated with the phytochemical compounds that undergo oxidation. But then we realize that with a higher milling intensity, the rate at which browning occurs is much reduced compared to other milling intensities. So it shows here that milling affects the rate at which this browning occurs. And if the milling intensity is higher, then perhaps the rate of browning could always be controlled. So this is one other thing that accompanies tiger nut milk deficiency, loss of whiteness during storage. This slide looks busy, but all that it presents is the fact that tiger nut milk has a creamy face. And when we try to measure the effect of creaming index on their effect of milling on the creaming index. This just presents the fact that, with higher milling intensities after just about 16 hours of storage, then the creaming index just goes way high over there. So we want to increase the yield, but then we must also be careful that this can affect the rate at which the oil separates from the other parts of the milk. So these are two main problems we have here. Indeed, there is also that bit of serum formation. When we say serum formation, this refers to a polymer depleted zone within the milk when it stands for a while. So then this part becomes very clear, and then you have the carbohydrates and the lipids moving to the top. And this is also not a desirable thing for milk extracts. So what we set out to do was to see how we can mitigate all these challenges. So we use several types of hydrocolloids. So hydrocolloids help to increase the viscosity of the medium by using carboxymethyl cellulose, guar gum, or xanthan gum. So these are stabilizers, if we want to call it. And then we try to also enrich the protein content by trying a pure, let's say, plant-based. So for the vegans or vegetarians, then maybe the soy protein isolate could be an option. On the other hand, we also try to experiment with sodium caseinate, and sodium caseinate is the main protein in dairy milk, constitutes about the 80% portion of protein in the milk. So we try to use sodium caseinate and different concentrations, combining it with different concentrations of these hydrocolloids. In fact, without hydrocolloids, tiger nut milk has about 70% of serum formation. That means that the bulk of the polymers all migrate to the top, about 70% to the top, only 30% of the polysaccharides. However, when we add just the proteins, then it reduces the serum formation from about 70 to about 6% or 10% for the soy protein isolates. And then for the sodium caseinate, you have about 3, 6, etc. But then when we add these hydrocolloids, especially with guar gum and xanthan gum, it increases the viscosity of the medium, resulting in the entire elimination of these phase separation. So we see that when we use 0.1% of the xanthan gum, then there's no phase separation. And when we use guar gum together with 2% of sodium caseinate, then we're talking about almost about 2%, which we can work around if we improve the processing parameters. So what we did was to just take these ones that were more stable, 1% sodium caseinate, 3% sodium caseinate, and then 2% sodium caseinate with guar gum. So these are with xanthan, and then that's the 2% sodium caseinate is with guar gum to study the effect it has on the physical properties. This graph looks also a bit busy, but then generally it talks about the viscosity of the different types of milk. So here we see the tiger nut milk in the open circles, and then the dark boxes are for the guar gum, and then these two are the xanthan systems. And we see that, for instance, for the xanthan systems, they show higher viscosities, and that of the tiger nut milk shows a viscosity about 3 millipascal, but with the inclusion of these additives, it increases the viscosity. If we look at, for instance, of course, tiger nut milk may be refrigerated or pasteurized. These are processes that can happen. So when it's refrigerated, they look okay, the viscosity is okay. But then when it is pasteurized, then you see that those with guar gum loses some viscosity. That means the systems with guar gum is not very stable to higher temperatures, but the xanthan systems are quite stable to higher temperatures. So these ones become more preferred in terms, but then of course with the tiger nut milk, the viscosity is way down there. And this is also partly the reason why they are so susceptible to phase separation, needing these amendments. You look at the flow effect on the flow properties. Then in table 4, I show the rheological characteristics of the enriched tiger nut milk. For instance, the flow, so tiger nut milk without any enrichment really flows like water, But then when we have sodium caseinate, the xanthan systems, and the guar gums, then it's able to make it a bit thicker, so that the flow property or the flow index is much lower than when compared to tiger nut milk, which flows like water. And then in terms of the consistency, we see that addition of the xanthan systems gives it a smoother flow And I think this is what consumers might also want compared to the tiger nut milk, which is really low in terms of consistency. So these are some of the physical properties. We try to engage some consumers on assessing the sensory characteristics of these milk. First, we used a process we call the flash profiling that allows consumers to use their own words to describe properties of the various tiger nut milk systems. And that of the unenriched tiger nut milk was generally described as having sediments. It is sweet, watery, but then it also has a raw taste in it. I think this is with regards to the crystalline starch. However, after these enrichments and some treatment, it moved from these descriptors to being sweet, thick for xanthan systems, whilst the guar gum was described as foamy. That means after blending, it traps a bit of bubbles and then looks more foamy, creamy, thick, and nutty. When we look at the assessment with 84 panelists, then these open bars are the tiger nut milk, and these are the enrichments. The enrichment doesn't have any effect on the aroma. However, in terms of thickness, consistency, mouthfeel, aftertaste, and general acceptance, we see that basically all the enrichments showed a higher acceptance or higher scores or rating compared to the tiger nut milk, showing that these enrichments were important for improving the thickness, the consistency, aftertaste, and the overall acceptability, especially with those with 3% sodium caseinate and xanthan systems. So in summary, we have seen that generally processing tiger nut into tiger nut milk, you encounter some problems, such as the particles separating into phases, making it less enjoyable for consumers. And we realized by modulating the tiger nut melanin intensity and the addition of hydrocolloids and milk proteins, it is possible to, for instance, improve the protein content, reduce the rate of color change. I didn't show the details of this, but the color change reduced drastically, improve the thickness and flow property, decrease creaming, thereby helping to stabilize the milk, and also improve the consumer acceptability. And we think that these findings could be helpful in integrating tiger nut as a valuable source of nutrients into the food chain. And this is just one way, and there are several other ways that examples which I showed in the previous slides. So there are some recommendations such as further research that could focus on other plants or milk proteins for optimizing the ingredient ratios and processing methods to improve consistent product quality and sensory appeal. And as we indicated from the beginning, collaboration among researchers, food technologies, industry, and manufacturers may be essential to facilitate or enhance the adoption of tiger nut milk into the mainstream plant-based milk products. And I want to acknowledge the contributors to this research, Dr. Jerry Ampofu-Esiama, who is a colleague also at the Department of Biochemistry, Prof. Enes Ekowabano, Mr. Joseph Akanson, Professors Harold Rom, Doris Yaros, Yvonne Schneider, and Susan Tan. And I want to thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kizzie-Hayford, for the excellent presentation. I noticed during the presentation there were some technical words, so I'll just leave my audience or my participants to ask you. So would want to move straight to the Q&A in no particular order. Please, if you have any question, to just show by hand in the chat, and then I'll call you. So we have a flow. Okay, so I see Dr. Kizzie-Hayford. Please ask your question, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Very insightful research findings. I have a very simple question. I noticed that in the food composition that you shared, you indicated the carbohydrates at a little over 6%, and then sucrose also at 6%. Any reason for separating the two? Because all are carbohydrates. So why didn't you just aggregate them and then make it maybe carbohydrates 12% plus? Is there any reason for that?
Generally, the carbohydrates, as you rightly mentioned, is true. This was separated because they give different effects to tiger nut milk. So there are some that are soluble, that are insoluble. Some are sweeter than others. So then I show these different compositions to have an idea that the occurrence of these sugars contribute to its perception of sweetness when milk is extracted from it. Otherwise, what you say is also true. I could have just shown the carbohydrates. So I showed the big carbohydrate thing as about 64%. This will just stop there. Yam also has a high carbohydrate content, but it's not sweet. So here I just showed those little bits to indicate that it's not only just the carbohydrates, but it also has some reducing sugars and non-reducing sugars, etc. But what you say is also true.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I see two hands raised, and these are from industry. So
Yeah.
John therefore will start, and then Amalata will continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Julius. I think this has been a very insightful presentation. Some of us will need the slides to digest this further. So I have just a few issues I want clarity on. First, I want to find out if the milk that you produce out of this, is it okay for ulcer patients? That is one. And then secondly, I just want to find out the shelf life of this tiger nuts. Assuming just I have it in the bag, I package it and it's just on the shelf.
Yeah.
How long would that last?
Okay.
The shelf life. And then also, there's so much noise made in traffic. You see these young ladies selling atadri, and when they see the men, they come at us that we should necessarily buy. What is it? Is it a zinc factor? What is it? If you can just clarify that. What special quality has this tiger nuts that every time the hawkers are pushing it on the men?
Okay.
Thank you.
So,
right.
Thank you very much. The first, maybe let me start from the last to the first. The first one is about perhaps its claimed aphrodisiac property. Some have described it to be just psychological. Some have just thought perhaps it works. So I have read a few articles. Ahau Mohammed, for instance, who did experiments on the effect of tiger nut extract on the copulatory behavior of rats. And there were some observations he made. For instance, he observed that the testicular mass had increased because the control, because those that fed on tiger nuts seemed to synthesize more of testosterone. But then as to the cause, I think you rightly mentioned one bit which was indicated in this article as the zinc content. Another factor was also the quercetin content. And probably also the fact that this is quite rich in energy. So then these ones are perhaps maybe more important, for instance, for the synthesis of testosterone in the area of the zinc content and the quercetin content. But as to, this was in relation to rats, but as to how this works in humans, whether it works or not, I haven't read as yet where experiments on humans have been conducted. And this is what
that for us.
Okay, so this is it. The second part was about the shelf life. The shelf life is dependent on their pasteurization regimes, or let me say the heat treatment regimes that these are subjected to. So it's possible that this stays now provisionally for approximately 1 month when it is packaged. Why I say 1 month is this. Normally, a mild pasteurization condition is used because when the tiger nut is heated, the crystalline starch that is formed, when the tiger nut is extracted, it has this crystalline starch deposits. And it's important that the starch deposits does not gel and rupture. So then you use a mild pasteurization condition, let's say about 70 degrees Celsius for about 15 minutes. to ensure that it doesn't impact heavily on the sensory characteristics, because people try to relate the characteristics of the tiger nut milk to the tiger nut itself. And too much heating, so here we call minimal processing, too much heating then destroys certain attributes of the rawness of the tiger nut when it's eaten raw. And so sometimes this balance between how much heat to apply and how long it can stay on the shelf needs to be optimized. So provisionally, it can last for about a month, but then these can be improved depending on how the enrichments are made. You know, there are several ways this can be improved further. And then about whether it's good for ulcer patients. When you ask about ulcer patients, then I'm assuming that ulcerating patients do not need to feed on, for instance, highly acidic foods. But of course, a lot of protein could mean that digestion would lead to a lot of release of acids. And so basically, this protein level is commensurate with dairy milk systems, except that this can even be additionally consumed by people who are lactose intolerant, because there is no lactose in the milk. So I will say that indeed, to make it more mild for ulcerated patients, then one can even reduce the protein level to the 1%, because we see that the 1% protein is also way better than the original unenriched tiger nut milk. So I will say that indeed this is also useful and can be consumed by ulcer patients, as well as even lactose intolerant patients. I mean, lactose intolerant individuals.
Thank you very much, Doc. So I see hands raised and also questions. So I'm asking that if you can take a series of questions and then you can address them.
Okay.
I see Amalate Nashiru from Mesty, and then there are comments also in the chat. So Amma will start, then Nashiru, and then I'll read the comments on the chat or questions and then you address.
Okay.
So back to you, Amma.
Thank you, Julius, and thank you, Dr. Kizzie-Hayford. This was a really great presentation. I have a question around how you collaborate. You've done a lot of research on tiger nut milk, and in your recommendations, you called for collaborations between food scientists, industrialists, around exploring tiger nut milk as a traditional food that could make it into sort of the mainstream processed food. What could that look like? And what kinds of partnerships are most helpful for researchers like you when it comes to commercialization? This being our maiden forum, we are keen to explore how we can make these useful for researchers, but also useful for industry. Some are small scale industries, and some will be better resourced, and it'd be good to get your reflections on what would make sense in terms of partnerships to take this to commercialization.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amma. So Nashiru, please, you could ask your question.
Thank you very much, Julius. So mine is almost like a comment. And I would like to say a big congratulations to Dr. Hayford for the great job. You guys are really good at your job. Yes, so as an entrepreneurial state, government will not do what you guys are doing very well already, but to do the things that you are not doing. And from your presentation, I still see some gaps that we are trying to address as a ministry and government, and that gap has to do with commercialization. I'm looking at your presentation. You haven't really emphasized on how you are going to commercialize it. The pathways of commercialization hasn't really been indicated. And that has always been our concern, whether we are doing academic research or maybe applied research for industry, because this research might be very relevant for academic purposes for you to do your publications. But what is the value proposition for industry, for instance? And how do you even commercialize it in a manner that you are a beneficiary to it. And so I think this platform might not afford us the opportunity to discuss on the solutions that we have to support universities to commercialize properly. But then we can have another forum to do that. But I'm very happy with your research findings. And what I'll have to say for now is that if you're able to identify any industry, and I'm happy GEA is here, and then AGI is also here. If you are able to identify any SME, any entrepreneur that is willing to have a tech transfer from you, we'll be happy to fund that. Because most of the time, the issue has been with industry approaching university, and they are like, it's very costly to adopt the technology. And that is one of the mechanisms we are putting in place. We'll be very happy to fund that technology transfer. And I would want to see this move from your laboratory to the market. But the discussion on how to go about the commercialization and what we can do to support you, I think we can discuss that later, because this platform is not really meant for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nashu. And then I'll go to the chat to read the few questions I have. And then we take two more, Gifty and then also Prof. Mensah. Please, we are a minute to time, but if you could kindly ask for some 10 minutes or 15 to wrap up, please, we ask of you. So one is, what is the sugar content of tiger nuts? Is it good for diabetics? Then the second question from Adjoani Mako says that, please, can the slides or presentation be sent to our mails? Unfortunately, I missed the presentation. And then her second question is that, can kids under 5 years take a tiger nut milk? And then also from Justice Kwabena Safo, this question is addressed to Nashiri. It says, please, for the government rep, what is the Ghana position on processing of traditional foods? Thank you. So, Doc.
Yes, thank you very much. Okay, so I think the first question had to do with partnerships with the industry, small scale, how, what kind of collaboration exists in trying to transfer this knowledge or share this knowledge with the industry. I would say that currently, this has been on a very individual base, because of course there are some industries we partner with in carrying out some of our experiments in the hope that they will be able to take up, so they have the facilities, for instance, for processing some of these aspects, but they also have their own product lines. And so when it comes to diversifying to accommodate what this presents, then it becomes problematic, because there's the need for funding, for instance. But this could be a very, this could be a good thing. One thing we were looking at is the possibility that we can have a center within our school or unit where we will be able to even show students how this happens, so that when they step out, they have this entrepreneurial mindset of starting businesses, having practiced already, not just the theory. So one thing is using this information to show them how it works in real sense, by, for instance, getting some kind of center for processing not only tiger nuts, but other underutilized food crops, how we can process them and bring them all into the mainstream foods, and show them that this is possible to do when you step out there. We have had some experiences. Maybe this was more like a personal experience with some small scale enterprises where it hasn't ended so well, because our needs are different. But then, for instance, a research scientist may not have all the time to develop new knowledge and then also go into the industry and implement it there. The small, medium scale enterprises may have the time for processing the tiger nuts, but may not have perhaps all the information to know how best to do this. So there's the need to link up. We need, for instance, funding, and then they also need more knowledge in getting the funds. So they can, on the ground, work to get the funds, but we can also research and create new knowledge, and there should be, these two should marry, there should be a common interest. But the point is that at a point, knowledge just perhaps becomes valuable as long as it is yours. The moment it goes into the hand of the industry or the small-scale enterprise, and then he gets familiar with the process, knows how to do everything, he doesn't have need for you anymore. So there are a few small-scale industries that I started with. Then I say, it's my passion to transfer the knowledge I have so that we cannot just produce yogurts, but we can produce tiger nut milk systems and yogurts so that we both run together. But then you leave the scene to go and acquire a few knowledge, and then you come back, and then they say we are on our own because now we know the process and everything, and then we can pay you off and then continue because we spend more time on the ground. And this is a big divide that could be very important if, for instance, GRIC and all the associates could come in to see how best such collaborations could work to the benefit of both research scientists and the industry. Maybe, I'm not sure to what extent, but this is what I would want to say in relation to the first question. The second one has to do with the industry, the diabetes. Yes, indeed, because of the low sugar concentration in tiger nuts and the fact that this is released slowly upon consumption of the tiger nuts, indeed, it is also prescribed for diabetics because it's important that the sugar does not shoot up, and consumption of tiger nuts, which is also the natural source of tiger nuts, natural source of sugar, makes it very good for diabetics as well. And with the aspects of the kids, maybe I'll just use myself as an example. I have two kids, and then we started them all after weaning. We started them all on tiger nut milk, and people see and ask what is the secret, because they seem to be physically, perhaps they seem to have some physical presence. Meanwhile, we ourselves are really diminutive, if I would say, in stature. And they like it very much, and it's also healthy for them, so long as the processing goes through, so long as the processing is good in terms of, it's harvested from the ground, so the washing and the disinfection and the heat treatment must be thorough. But then the product that comes out of it, it's so perfect and very, it's also very commendable, even for kids. So then maybe in future, one can even look at infant meals from tiger nuts, and all of these can work perfectly at the end. This is what I would want to say, but I think the aspect on gaps, pathways, industry approaches, I think these ones, as was asked, could be continued as we talk behind after the presentations.
Thank you. Doc, please, are you done?
Yes, I'm done. Thank you.
Right. So then we take the final sets, and then we move into the feedback, and then the summary, and then next step. So before I call on Gifty and then also Prof. Mensah, there's a question on the chat, and I think that may go to Nashiru or Doc. It says, what is the support for those interested in investing or commercializing tiger nut from your end? And then on that question, I would want to call on Gifty to ask her, then followed by Prof. Mavis, Mensah, and then we end with this a round of questions.
Okay.
Hello, yeah. My name is Gifty from the FDA, and I would like to commend Doc for the work, and we are happy to be here. This is what we talked about, that we need a lot of these collaborations. Once we are here, and industry people need some help, we will be there to support them as well. So this, when you do your research and you don't keep it, you don't shelf it and you share with us, then we know what is happening academically. And then when we also have a problem, we also bring to you to help us share. So we are happy to be here at FDA. I have a question on, in fact, two, but all related to shelf life.
Okay.
When you talk about declaration of the tiger nuts, I didn't see the storage condition under which you looked at the rates of declaration. I wanted to know, was it kept in a particular temperature or under normal room storage temperature? And then when you look at the people who sell these beverages, some of them already people are producing some of these beverages. The way it is being sold around town, I mean, in traffic, in the heat and all that. What do you think? What is the recommended storage that has to be kept? And when you talk about the kids, yes, I also prepare some at times in the house for them. And they are supposed to take it to their school to, at times, as their snack, alternative to the so-called sugar sweetened beverages. So how are when we decide to use it, how are the children going to keep it so that they are able to get the optimal nutrition needs that they want? That's my question. And once again, thank you. And we are happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure. So about the discoloration, this.
Okay, Prof. Mensah has says, and then I will be done with the set of questions.
Okay, so a very quick one. Congratulations, Doc. That was a brilliant presentation. So from an entrepreneurial perspective, I have a number of issues, but let me go straight to one of them. Well done for convincing us about the product feasibility. Have you so far conducted any financial feasibility analysis with at least the few small enterprises that you have been engaging? Because this is one important aspect of convincing these enterprises to really take up what you are offering, all right? Because they are in there for a livelihood, and if you're not going to make gains, then it becomes very difficult. So maybe the financial feasibility and also the technical aspects, do they have what it takes in terms of equipment, etc., to buy into this? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So first of all, about the financial feasibility. Generally, tiger nuts now, I know one industry, I think the Tiger House, that is already producing some of these tiger nut milk and is making quite significant profits. And this is because the tiger nut itself, after the extraction process, about 4 kilograms. From 4 kilograms, he's able to make approximately 80 bottles of 500 ml, 80 bottles, and that sells a lot. So the tiger nut itself is not expensive. With regards to the sodium caseinate, many times when this is precipitated, or this can be obtained commercially, but then we realize that even with 1%, very little amount of this, so about 1%, you are able to attain the needed physical properties that allows it to sell. And again, this can even be done at the domestic level. So then in terms of technical capability or requirements, this is not many times the mixing, you need a mixer, and this mixer for our lab work, we just use homogenizers or blenders to let this happen. But even at the industrial level, one can use homogenizers, ultra high pressure homogenizers, among others, that would even enhance the storage or the stability even much longer. So I know of, let me call it at the cottage level, people who have been able to do combine these financial requirements with technical requirements to be able to start small businesses alongside. The thing is that as the first question wanted to address from the FDA, the needed extra knowledge that is needed here is the how hygienic the hygienic environments and handling practices that is necessary, because this is a very rich nutrient base in terms of the enzyme contents and also the sugar contents, so anything that gets in there as a contaminant can easily support microbial growth so quickly. So it's very important that, for instance, the keeping conditions, the conditions under which the experiment was conducted was at 20 degrees Celsius. So this is not refrigeration, neither is it a tropical ambient temperature, but we did it at a room temperature of 20 degrees Celsius. This was the room temperature because the place was the temperature conditions were controlled within the rooms. So this was just done to see how it will behave. But obviously, one would agree that if the temperature is brought back to, let's say, 6 degrees Celsius, one can expect that it can even stay much longer and the rate of browning would be significantly reduced. But normally we push the experimental conditions to this end to see what is the worst case scenario and what would happen to this. Storage temperature of commercially produced tiger nuts, so those that are sold in the markets or by the roadside, I would say that even how those that are sold by the roadside may not be aseptically bottled. When I say aseptically bottled, it means that these are cups that are maybe heated, etc., and then they are manually filled and then capped. If it's not aseptically bottled, then it means that it already has some microbial, can already have exposure to some microorganisms in the environment, whether in the environment, in the handling, in the equipment, or even on their hands. And when it is kept at ambient conditions, let's say our warm temperature conditions, it creates a very conducive environment for microbial proliferation. And so then they show very quick deterioration or quick spoilage. I think if this is bottled, I can expect that within a space of not more than 6-7 hours, already deterioration would have begun. So to be able to prevent this, perhaps it's important that during the bottling, everything is preheated, heated in boiling water. The tiger nut itself is bottled hot and capped, refrigerated, and then perhaps for the kids, if this is in their bags for, let's say, until first break, second break, etc., this can be okay to go. But then if it is bottled cold and then capped and sent to school, there are chances that this can go through quick microbial deterioration. Perhaps it may not be perceived at the time of consumption, but this could also have some consequences upon, let's say, consumption if it's not well kept. This is what perhaps I would want to say a bit to these, the questions on the set of questions that have been asked. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Doc. I'm really excited for this presentation. And so we'd want to move to the next session, which is the feedback. And so respectfully, we would ask that you share your feedback with us in the next few minutes. And so kindly upload that information and any question that you have, how you want us to take this collaboration to the next level. The questionnaire that we've developed is to help us in that regard. Please would ask that you can spend us some few minutes, 2 minutes to do so. And then after that, the chair, Prof. Mensah, will give a few remarks and then I come in with the next steps. So let's use these 2 minutes to share the feedback. So currently we have no response yet. So at least let's have about a minimum of 10 people responding. So we know that you appreciate the Dr. Kizzie-Hayford's presentation, and also to give us extra work to do to ensure that your needs are being addressed. We still haven't received any response yet, so respectfully, if you could help us, we need your feedback to improve the quality of work we're doing at GRIC and also to ensure that your needs are being addressed.
We're still completing the forms, so you see soon.
Okay, thank you for the assurance. Okay, so we have one response. We can do more. At least the target is to get 10. So respectfully, if we could do more. Okay, we have 2, so we are left with 8 more to go. 8 more to go. And also those that are into numerology, 8 would mean new beginnings. So we are starting with new. So we have 2 more, 8 more to go. We have 8 more to go. Please, let's do this within the next 4 minutes. Please, sorry, we have taken much of your time. We've gone overboard almost 30 minutes. Okay, so we have 3 left with 7, perfect 7. So let's make this perfect. Okay, so we have 6 more to go. 6 more to go. 6 more to go. 6 more to go. Six more to go. 6 more. We can do this. Okay, 5. So left with 5 more to go minimum. I'm sure we'll be able to do more than 10. And so we have 5 more to go. 5 more, and then A Prof Chair will take over. Then I come with the next steps. 5 more to go. Okay, so we have 6, so 4 more to go. 4 more, 4 more. Four more to go. 4 more. Four more to go. 4 more. Let's hit our 4. So Justice is saying that his sheet is not working. So could you retry again? Okay, so we have 7, so 3 more to go. So 3 more, 3 more, 3 more. 3 more to go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we have 8 new beginnings. So we are left with 2. 9. Okay, wow, excellent. Then left with number 1. Numero uno. The final one. And who would that be? One more to go. 1 more to go. 1 more to go. And we hit our target. 1 more. 1 more. 1 more. The last person to make it 10 for us. 1 more. 1 more. Final 1 more. Okay, all right, we hit our target. So thank you very much, everyone. And those of us that are still working on, please, we would ask that you continue. So I call on Prof Chair to give her a few remarks, and then I come with the next steps, and then we end it here.
Right, so thank you very much, Mr. Lamte. I want to believe that all participants would agree with me that it has been a very, successful session, a maiden session, and we have, to a higher extent achieved our aim of translating research into user-friendly format for industry players to actually study and consider the uptake of such findings. We are very grateful to Dr. Nazir Kizzie-Hayford and to Impact Invest in Ghana for putting together this whole initiative. I would want to urge Dr. Kizzie-Hayford to consider all the comments that have come up, very important comments from the FDA, from the government representatives, and from industry, in pushing this agenda forward. I would love to see one day tiger nuts, largely used in our food value chain to create value for society. And so I would want to say a big thank you. And lastly, I would also want to mention that last year we had our maiden Ghana Research and Innovation Forum. And this year in November, the second version of the forum would take place. And so all are cordially invited. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. So the next steps is that based on the feedback that we'll get, we'll share the actionable steps that comes. We are glad that MESTI is in to support with the tech transfer aspect, and then also the FDA involved. So going forward in all our subsequent sessions, we will be reaching out to you in advance based on the research work that we want to share, so that before coming, you're able to prepare and come to support. And also, the questions that have been raised, we at the Secretariat will take it up to the next level and ensure that these issues are addressed. We also kindly ask that you also visit the GRICGhana.org platform. Currently, it's in the beta state. We are working to perfect it, and hopefully at the launch at the second edition of the Ghana Research and Industry Collaborative Forum, we will have it launch where there will be these research works that are in industry friendly format, and we also want to use the platform for you to engage researchers. So for instance, with the work that has been done by Dr. Kizzie-Hayford, once you're on the platform, you could engage him to know better for your uptake and also other critical needs of yours. So on that note, we want to say a very big thank you for spending your time with us. We know we've gone overboard by 28 minutes, but you kept true to the call, and we're excited, and we hope to see you in the next edition next month, and we have your support. So thank you and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you too.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.